At JF McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Day 7. It's the longest practice of the year, and it's in the books. Day 7. Some of the news and notes with John McMullen right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Johnny Mac, what's going on, my friend?
What's going on, Mike?
All is well.
Scare today. Miles Sanders.
Yes, I saw. We heard all throughout the Delaware Valley here this big sigh when you guys all tweeted out that Miles Sanders had gone down.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you have to do when it happens. But, yeah, he hobbled off the field with what Doug later described was a foot. It was either going to be a foot or an ankle. And he walked off pretty gingerly, but he went into the medical tent, came out after about 10 minutes, and I happened to be right there, and he said he's doing okay, and that don't tweet this, that he got injured. And I told him, too late, man. Everybody already did.
Yeah.
But after practice, Doug said he doesn't expect it to be too serious, but more tests need to be done. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses some time in practice because you want to be cautious, but could have been much worse. There's no question. He returned to practice. He didn't go into the complex, so that's a good sign. Didn't go in, but he watched the rest of practice, I should say. So, which
goes back to the question that we kind of talked about on Friday or Monday show, which was he was kind of hurt in the mini camps and he was a little bit behind, and we were hearing good things. But does this injury now make us feel like, okay, this is going to keep him behind again?
Well, it could. We'll see how long he's out, if he's out. I mean, we have to wait. They have a day off tomorrow, so that helps. And then they pick up practice again on Saturday. So if he is not able to be out there and he starts missing practices, yeah, I mean, he's a rookie, and that would certainly hurt. But I do think you have to weigh it and play it cautious if it's about ramping him up as quickly as possible versus making sure he's 100%. I think you have to make sure he's healthy. So it's just one of those things. And, you know, we're through 7 practices now, and it's been pretty good from a health standpoint. Jason Peters didn't finish practice today, but that was more of the length of the session, the heat, no issues there. So they've been pretty healthy so far. I mean, you see all around the league, always players start to go down.
John, just to kind of follow up on Sanders and, you know, what he could bring to this team, I mean, you know, there's a lot of intrigue from me anyway on that running back position and how maybe his health really changes, his health or lack thereof changes the way that Peterson wants to use this backfield.
Well, I've said early in the season I expect it to be pretty simple in the fact that it'll be Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders will mix in and sort of spell him, and Darren Sproles will be the third down back. And then if Miles starts to perform well, I think he can earn more playing time. But I never thought there's a lot of hype, and we know how training camp is and young players, and everybody wants to see him on the field as quickly as possible. I don't necessarily think that's the Eagles' goal. They understand what they have in Jordan Howard. Remember, this is a veteran team with high aspirations, and generally – when you are that, you don't want to throw a lot of rookies on the field. That's not to say he can't earn more playing time as the season goes on if he starts to perform, but I always thought that was the plan. I thought it was the plan before he tweaked his foot today. I think it's the plan now, and I think it'll be the plan after, whether he's healthy or not.
Yeah. Well, I guess you got to start questioning whether or not, he has the, the ability to stay healthy in the NFL.
Well, I don't know.
Is that not fair to ask?
Yeah, I think at this point. I mean, the hamstring, Doug was very clear about that and said it wasn't serious in the spring and they were just being extra cautious. And there's no need to push those types of things in an off-season environment where there's no pads anyway. You're just running around in shirts and shorts. So. And then he had been completely healthy, as Doug said he would be for training camp until today. So it's not like he's been nicked up 5, 6 times, and he's leaving practice every day. But we'll see. I mean, you have to wait and see how long this is, if it's more serious, just because, I mean, remember, this is real time. And just because Doug is getting positive reports on the field doesn't mean a test doesn't show a sprained foot or something of that nature, and it's a couple-week injury. So there's more tests to be done, and we'll see how it shakes out.
All right, at JF McMullen for more from Johnny Mac on today's Eagles stuff. We'll continue, of course, to go through some of the things that happened today. Carson Wentz, you said, wasn't the sharpest from an accuracy standpoint today, and obviously, you said you described him as uneven today.
Yeah, it was a big situational day, and they did a ton of red zone work, and that's really confined spaces, tight window throws, and he wasn't his typical self, I think, from an accuracy standpoint. So to have that many reps, and he had a ton of reps today. I think it was over 40 for him specifically, so it was more than he normally gets. And he wasn't his best day, and it was probably his worst day, at least over the summer, to be honest. But I don't think it's cause for concern. I mean, that's just like a starting pitcher who doesn't have it on a particular day, and I imagine he'll bounce back Saturday and be the same guy he typically is.
John, also some other news and notes. By the way, DeSean Jackson with the maintenance day today. When you see him out there, does Jackson still, does he show any signs of a guy who's, on the other side of 30 playing wide receiver?
No, he's the fastest guy in the field. It's pretty amazing. I mean, this week, back-to-back days, I always say DeSean's the fastest guy on the team. Avonte Maddox is probably the second. He blew his doors off. And then the next day, he blew Sidney Jones away, just ran right by him. So you're talking about a 32-year-old guy outrunning really, really fast guys in their early 20s. It's pretty amazing that he's still as fast as – I don't know if he's as fast as he's ever been, but he's fast enough, and he's faster than guys who are 22 and 23.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it since the offseason. In minicamp, he was just running by people consistently. But it's really impressive. I mean, when he does it against Rasul Douglas or somebody like that, it's not that impressive. But when he does it against Avonte Maddox, you start to go, wow, because Avonte ran, I think, under a 4.4 at the combine. So he's ultra fast himself, and it's not even a race.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that, because there were some people like, hey, you're bringing in an aging guy and maybe he's going to slow down. Doesn't sound like that he's a guy who's ready to slow down here anytime soon. Corey Clement was back too, right?
Yeah, he worked in 7-on-7 for the first time, so that's a big step forward for him. He's still not cleared for team drills, but it's been a long time. Knee injury. It wasn't an ACL. I keep seeing that reported. That's frustrating. But it was an MCL or an LCL. And he's been out a long time, and he's one of those guys that I think people assume because of, I don't know what it is, probably the Super Bowl success, that he's a part of this team. Like, that backfield's a lot deeper this year than it was last year.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with that question of whether or not he's a shoo-in to make this team.
No, I don't think he is. I still think it's, if you're going to put percentage on it, he's still on the positive side of 50-50. Maybe 60-40, but if he can't stay healthy and if he has a bad summer, if he can't get back on the field, and say somebody like Josh Adams performs well, yeah, I mean, they could move on. I don't think there's any question that he's got some things to prove. And to me, there's only 3 backs that are locks to make this team, and that's Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders and Darren Sproles.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, as you kind of said, he was on that team, and he had maybe one of the most memorable, biggest plays in that game, right?
Well, and that's why.
Besides the Philly play, that play where Clement just starts running through guys and stiff-arming dudes all over the place.
And he also had the great catch in the end zone. So he'll always have that Super Bowl hero, and people sort of take that out of one game. Look, you perform at the biggest stage. It doesn't mean you perform like that consistently. And we're still talking about a guy who was undrafted, who's not proven, who hasn't played a ton.
And been hurt.
And has been hurt. Just happened to have the best game of his life on the biggest stage. And that, in this league, that doesn't matter. It's what the Eagles are focused on, going to the Super Bowl again, not thinking about the Super Bowl after the 2017 season. So that's their concern. And trust me, they don't care what happened in that game at this point. They care about winning the next game and winning and getting to the next Super Bowl. So while fans may pay a lot of attention to that, the teams don't.
Football at 4 with Johnny Mack here. 13 personnel, red zone. New look here. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it was a little bit interesting. Doug's kind of famous for his formations and how many different looks he throws out opponents. And as I said, today was a big red zone day. So they were working on a lot of different formations, a lot of different plays, and one of them was 13 personnel, which is 3 tight ends, and they were all lined up in line, tight to the line, and then rotated and then motioned out. And the running back, Donnell Pumphrey, was behind them. So if you're a defensive coordinator, you're thinking bubble screen. They're just going to throw it to the running back and let the 3 tight ends block. But instead, they faked it that way and just ran a quarterback draw. So it's just sort of those interesting things you see. You may never see it all year. But as you just mentioned, Philly, the Eagles always have things in their pocket, and they tend to bring them out in key situations.
Yeah, and, in this day and age, everybody's always looking for that next, new look, that new play, that new something there. So, obviously, Doug known for being very original, I guess you could say, somewhere around the goal line, the Philly play, all that kind of stuff. You saw Andre Dillard getting first-team reps at left tackle with Jason Peters kind of out. Now, you mentioned the other day that Dillard looks smooth as a pass blocker. Is he making strides as a run blocker? Is that an area where you can see them working with him?
Yeah, I think that's the concern with him, if there is a concern, is the fact that he was not, they didn't run the ball at Washington State, number one. All they did was throw it. So he's constantly in a 2-point stance, never in a 3-point stance, never really has to fire off the ball. And then there's the general, that's college versus pro offensive lineman, and that's just sort of a thing of being a kid versus an adult. Almost everybody has to get stronger to play at this level. And so that's their goal and they expect that with all the young players, and the fact that they have to get in an NFL weight room and they have to get stronger. But that's the easy part. If you can pass protect in this league as a left tackle, you're way ahead of the curve, and he's just way ahead of the curve from that standpoint. So I wouldn't be concerned about Andre Dillard at all. But sure, if you want to say what does he need to improve on most, it's certainly run blocking.
No, and it's fun because, as the first-round pick, and it stinks for the fans because we always want to see that guy get out there and play, but the Eagles can really work with him and kind of fine-tune his game for a full year here.
Yeah, you expect him to play a little bit because we've seen Jason Peters.
He'd all make it through a year.
Yeah, well, and even games. Sometimes at his age and his injury history, whether it's he has to tap out for a series here or there, and he tapped out of practice today, so that's a perfect example before it finished. I expect him to get some playing time, but it is a good situation to be in. The fact you don't have to rush them on the field, and it's a luxury. Normally, if you want to normally most teams need to get first-round picks on the field. and only really good teams can afford a so-called luxury pick, and that's what Dillard is. The Eagles can wait a year and then ramp him up to be the left tackle.
A couple more notes with John McMullen. How about Jordan Howard in the pass game?
Yeah, he had a big gain on a wheel route today, which I think surprised a lot of people because he's not known for his receiving skill. And the Eagles were working on combination routes and sort of went outside when the tight end went inside and lost the linebacker, got a little separation and made a nice catch. And certainly that's not the strength of his game. I don't expect to see it a ton. But it is nice to know that you can not totally ignore him in the passing game if you're a defense. I think that's the goal with Jordan Howard, to prove that, hey, if you're not going to pay any attention to him, we're going to throw him the football. And he proved today at least that it's probably not going to be a disaster if you throw it his way.
Yeah, and then, of course, Joe Ostman, who is Mr. Lehigh this year?
Well, it's interesting because people, and you've asked, like, who's the surprise? And Doug brought up Carlton Agudosi today, who had, I think, 3 touchdowns in red zone work, his 6'6" receiver from Rutgers. And people kind of bring up Joe, but everybody knows about Joe. People bring up Greg Ward.
Yeah, you kind of described the other day, like they want to try to sneak him through so that they don't have to put him on the 53, but
yeah, maybe. I mean, it's clear they know he can rush the passer. They used him as a joker the other day, which is, you could see them trying to develop a role for him.
Just for people out there, he led the nation in sacks as a senior and was a guy 27 sacks in college, had 14 as a senior. This is a guy who had some he wasn't invited to the combine though, so didn't get drafted.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of size. I mean, he's undersized. So when you're talking about college players and projecting them to the pros, you can be very successful at the college level, but it's tough to be a 45-pound defensive end in the NFL. It's just you're going to get beat up and you're going to get pushed around. And that's what Joe was when he got here. He's now up to 260, 265. So he's gotten a lot bigger. He's never going to be the rangiest guy in the world. So that's the issue. But he's kept his speed, he's kept his quickness, and he's just his first step is just amazing. And he's made life miserable for Jordan Mailata. So it's interesting today to have him and Josh Sweat flip sides. And I think it was twofold. And one of them was to see Joe Ostman against Andre Dillard and see him against that type of pass protector and see if it holds up or if it's just Mailata's not good enough and he's too good for him. So I think you want to see him against better competition, better players.
Yeah.
But it's a numbers game. I mean, the Eagles are deep at defensive end. And look, I said it yesterday on the show. He's better than Sharif Miller, but they're not going to cut Sharif Miller,
right? And
understandably so. So unless there's an injury, and there can always be an injury, we just talked about Miles today, it's going to be tough to get him on the 53, but he belongs on the 53. I'll say that.
Now, you mentioned Agudosi, and you said you asked Doug today. He had some nice catches. He's 6'6". I don't know that there's any way that they could figure out a way to keep him, but practice squad possible. But when you watch this guy, do you see an NFL receiver that, 6'6", red zone target, figure out a way to play him?
Yeah, well, certainly that. I mean, you saw it today. And as I said, they worked on a ton of red zone. He had 3 different touchdowns, and they were all contested catches. I mean, that's what he is. He's big, he's rangy, he can go up over everybody. The question is, can he do the other things? And that's what I kind of asked Doug. The whole route tree, the change of direction, and he mentioned he's got to keep his pads low because he is so big and he is so tall. So all of that is an issue. But the Eagles are just so deep at that position And they already have. That's the interesting part. I mean, they're not 6'6", but unless you talk about the tight ends, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, but you also have at receiver Jeffrey and Arcega-Whiteside. So you have all these lengthy receivers, whether they're tight ends or wideouts. And the Eagles have an embarrassment of riches at that particular position and throwing the football in the red zone. And it's going to be interesting to see how much they do that, how much they just throw it up and say to guys, just go get it. And certainly Agudosi did it today, again and again and again.
It's like one of those things. It's like, I don't know how much I have to do to try to impress you to make the team or whatever, but it seems like you would have, at that position, a major uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to keep 5 or 6, potentially, we talk about the 4 definites, which are Jeffrey and Aguilar and DeSean Jackson. Then you have Arcega-Whiteside, who's the 4th. Matt Collins is not back at practice, would be 5th. Shelton Gibson, because of his special teams ability, is still here. And then you talk about Greg Ward, who Doug has mentioned consistently, Mark and Michelle, who he's mentioned consistently. They have a load of receivers. And, yeah, it's an uphill battle. And I think the ceiling is the practice squad for him. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's already learned a little bit. He was in Arizona with Larry Fitzgerald. He talked about that today. So there's some potential there. And Doug brought him up today when he was asked about unheralded players. That was the first name out of his mouth.
All right, that's a position to watch. Definitely a lot of talent at that spot. Think about where they were in 16 and now think about where they are today, where there's guys who were very intriguing and probably won't make this team. At JF McMullen, day 7 in the books. A week from today, we'll have a game to preview, and it's all right here on 97.3 ESPN. John McMullen at 97.3ESPN.com. John, take care, pal. We'll do it again tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Okay, football at 4. Johnny Mac back tomorrow on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.